to go inside the cutting room with Bobby Osteen for a conversation with Myron Kirstein, ACE. Please welcome our moderator extraordinaire, Bobby Osteen.
Oh my God. Look at all these people here to see you.
Hi everyone, I'm so excited to be doing this panel today with the wonderful Myron Kirstein. We're going to talk about his incredible work, but part of our goal here today is to also talk about the life of an editor and just various lessons and experiences you had and how it helped shape you, and talk about the business in an honest way, which is always good, right?
It's been great. It's been great.
Everything's been perfect. So I wanted to first, I'm going to plant him in his first cutting room, but I'm going to do a quick rewind and give you just a little background about Myron before he lands there. A beautiful thing, I think, is that your dad was a talented artist, but also a plumber, because he was a child of the Depression. He was practical, and that resonated with you because you chose a practical profession in editing. Is that true? I don't know.
Yeah, I remember him saying to me, "You'll never make a living watching movies," and you know, he really believed in finding his way, making a living with a trade. Ironically enough, editing is a trade, and an art. And so I got the best of both worlds when I.
And it was really sweet. You know, they would admire buildings together, and Myron toyed with the idea of being an architect, which is not that dissimilar from an editor either. Doing photorealistic drawings, and even toyed with the idea of being a VFX artist, matte paintings, and you were a sculptor. You were an artist wanting to save the world, very idealistic, and landed in University of Massachusetts Amherst, and then also through their connection, Hampshire College, where you discovered filmmaking, experimental filmmaking, and that you had a knack for editing.
Yeah, I felt that people needed someone to cut their footage together, and so I volunteered and started to really love it. And I was also making a lot of collages in my art program, and I found that making collages and putting together found footage, or footage that was given to me, very similar, and really just making something new out of collected bits, and I found a real joy and love in that.
And instead of going back to suburban San Diego, where he came from, he's decided to go to New York and work in film, and slept on a lot of floors of friends' apartments. And pretty soon you were smart enough to offer yourself for free, because that always gets you more work, as a PA. And you said suddenly the jobs were coming in. It's just, gee, I wonder why. You know, you had so many different experiences that were, and I always think for editors, the more different and even bizarre experiences you have are really formative and really helpful, because editors have to adjust to a new world every time they come in onto a new project. You know, it's like a new country, you know. Different relationships, personalities, the nature of the production, the hierarchies, and it's a collaborative art, and you have to sometimes hit the ground running when relationships have already been established. So I think that I'm going to take you through a few extremes in a way. The first one, where you were initially a PA and then an editor, was TV Nation, which was Michael Moore's satirical show, which was way ahead of its time. That was before
Daily Show
and all that stuff, yeah.
Very same sort of style and format. And yeah, I was working for, as a post PA, first a production PA, and I was locking up Times Square in the middle of the winter, and I was like, I can never do this ever again. And suddenly I was like, well, is there anything in post? And they had 7 editors working on that show, and they were all these incredible alchemists making amazing things, again, of hours and hours of footage, and I just fell in love with with all of them, and suddenly by 6 months later, I was getting my first assistant editor credit. So it was great to be thrown into the fire that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great learning experience for an editor. And then, flash forward a little more, and now you're working on Velvet Goldmine with the great Jim Lyons, and you said that he had a really big impression, left a really big impression on you. Could you describe why he had that impact on you?
He was really a Renaissance artist type personality. He loved poetry. He was an actor. He was an editor. He was like Keith Richards to me. You know, he literally looked like a rock star. He was gay. He was very attractive. Yeah, I just loved him, and his the way he approached footage was like anything goes. We're gonna paint with this footage, and I just loved it. I loved his style of how he explores footage and make things and these beautiful dissolves and then of course I was a real big fan of Todd Haynes. So watching them work together, you know, I remember seeing Safe in New York and feeling physically ill after coming out of the theater, and I was like, I need to work for these filmmakers, because if they can do that to me, they're doing something really interesting. And so when I got to work on Velvet Goldmine with Jim, it was just this really mad, crazy experience, going to London and then finishing back here. And Shelley Westerman was under me as an assistant editor.
Yeah, Shelley. We love her.
And yeah, it was just it couldn't be a better way to be thrown in. And again, I didn't know what I was doing. I hadn't done a musical at that point, and yeah, it was a very complicated show.
And you also had to deal with the politics of the cutting room. They were romantic partners, and Todd Haynes has, I heard from another editor as well, he has a tendency to go into the cutting room late into the night and recut the movie. So Jim had to, with grace, navigate the fact that, you know, WTF,
yeah.
what's happening here? And you watched that, and it's good for you as a young editor to experience that negotiation, right?
Yeah, that's why I tell all my directors they can't cut. No, it was good to see how Jim had to deal with it and not lose his cool. And sometimes I'd boot up the Avid and I was like, what happened here? And you know, and put it back together and you know, just try not to be too uptight about things when they got messy. And so not just watching him, how he dealt with the editor, but also as an assistant, trying to put it all together to not lose my cool if things felt like it was a mess the next day.
Yeah, and it was such an interesting film. I mean, in terms of, you know, I don't know if you know it, but it's a fictional, basically a lot of it based on David Bowie, but it was Roxy Music, which was new to you. And just your sort of first experience, I mean, music and musicals are a big part of Myron's career, you know, and now he's been exposed to an avant-garde, breaking rules and really interesting film. And
yeah, I get goosebumps thinking about it because the fact that was my first musical that I got to, I mean, it's just crazy that to have that opportunity and just to be part of something so amazing, you know, from the get-go. And also having had a real love for that genre, you know, young, you know, and liking everything from, you know, The Wizard of Oz to Sound of Music to Purple Rain. And then getting to work on something that cool was, you know, really amazing.
Flash forward, now you have an offer from, is it Andrew Marcus, wanted you to help out on Hedwig and the Angry Inch. Woo! Not a conventional. So Steve, again, the politics, Stephen Trask and James Cameron Mitchell, they co-created this, but it was problematic footage, inexperience, and he wanted you to assist, and you, rightly so, what editors have to do, advocate for themselves, and you said, I'll help you, but I'm going to be an editor on this. And so you now had to navigate this kind of complicated relationship with people who were co-creating this, the politics of the cutting room, and which is a huge part of all editors' worlds. And so you were tasked with working with Stephen Trask, and
which is the best gig ever, by the way. It's like the guy that created, John. He was the actor,
Yeah.
Stephen Trask created all the music.
Yeah.
And so I'm working with the guy. Now, I didn't even realize at the time, but to be working with the guy who created the music, that's all I get to do is cut songs. And yeah, it was great. It was a little bit of like, Andy, Andrew Marcus and John were like, they're just doing their thing over there, and I was like, yeah, we're doing our thing over here. And but it was good to know, like, okay, we could present this, and if some things don't make it in, that's fine, and understanding the politics of that.
Yeah, and I mean, the footage was problematic, so that's another lesson of crafting something that's workable. So now, talk about going into an entirely different country. Pretty soon after, next year, you worked on Sex and the City. So now you're dealing with TV Dynasty, HBO, showrunners, a whole different world, and great inspiration from Wendy Stanzler,
Michael
Berenbaum,
Keith
Keith Sanford. I mean,
yeah.
And
3 of the best editors on the planet.
Yeah.
Like those are my mentors, it's like.
And wonderful humans.
Yes.
And
I had the night shift though, so I didn't see them a lot. But
because you were doing.
Well, we were digitizing. We did a lot of
Yeah.
digitizing back in those days, but no, I got to see them enough to, make an impression on them. But of course, anything that came out of the cutting room was like just amazing. To be working on the first season of Sex and the City, and not knowing at the time that it was going to become what it did, but they were just incredible. And I remember saying to Kate, like, I don't know why I just had this idea of like, would you try Moon River at the beginning of one of your episodes? And she put it in. I was like so excited that she had done that, and oh my God, it actually worked. And they're like, well, we can't afford it, so it's going out. But I just still have me on that, But yeah, it was just again a different country, and also it was my first union gig, so that was a big jump too, to finally have health care, and working at Silver Cup Studios, and then taking the car service home at night because my shift would end at 4 a.m, and but here you go.
And I don't you all think that sometimes you do your best work, and when the outcome may not be a perfect movie, but the footage was so challenging that it's no one will know. No one will know how hard it is, and there is a releasable movie that's good. And the backstory of raising Victor Vargas, which you may not have seen. Yeah, it's not that well known, but Myron was the editor on it, and 90% of that movie was improv. And all the actors were completely inexperienced. And it's a beautiful film, so I encourage you to see it, really. Your accomplishment is a little bit invisible because of, you can't, there's no like roll up at the beginning, like, listen. This is what he had to deal with, and watch.
This was hard.
And what was great though, it was an entree into an incredible opportunity, because Zach Braff saw that movie, and that was the basis for his hiring you for Garden State, which, yes. And one of the things that we've talked about, which I love, is that you said you were inspired by Harold and Maude and
The Graduate.
The Graduate, yes, and also being there. And if you know the movie, I mean, it's very heartfelt and it's very unique and quirky. But there's one of the standout things about it, which is to your credit, is that they're trusting awkwardness and stillness and strangeness and letting the performances breathe in a way that's a little bit pushing it, and having the courage to do that. And also, getting back to music, if you remember the movie, the tearjerker moment in the rain when they kiss is a song that Myron picked, Only Living Boy in New York, Paul Simon. And this was the beginning of your really getting needle drops in there, and the Shins was already selected, but there was Zach Braff gave you a playlist. And so you had a lot of input with music on that film. It's a lot of music.
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely scripted moments where some songs were written in, the Shins being one of them. But yeah, I placed 90% of that music in that film. And, it was good to really start to understand what your gut was telling you when you put something in. And when I was alone, we were cutting the film at Zach's place in Laurel Canyon, and by the way, he just moved in this house. He just had finished the first season of Scrubs, and it was a completely empty house, and then Avid sitting in the middle of it, and I'm cutting Garden State right there, and he's, I don't know, somewhere, and then I put in Only Living Boy in New York there alone, and I just bust into tears. I was like, okay, that is something. There's something there. Why am I responding that way? And it could have easily gone away, or we couldn't get it cleared or what have you. But just being able to start understanding what my gut was telling me about the relationships with music and the images I was cutting was really cool. Of course, we all have that experience now. There's a lot of TV that's done it, and like Grey's Anatomy sort of made it the thing, and now it's maybe overplayed or what have you. But at the time, like, I hadn't seen a lot of examples other than Harold and Maude and The Graduate.
And Wes Anderson.
Yeah, Wes Anderson for sure. It was just only a few filmmakers of the time really doing it. But the point being is I was starting to understand what my gut was telling me when I did certain things in the cutting room and how I was responding to it emotionally. And just starting to develop that muscle, whether it was music or choosing performance. I was getting better at understanding that and trusting it.
And you're a big crier, aren't you? He seems to cry when he reads scripts, and you realize that your heart is your superpower, and embracing the fact that you have awareness of that, and it's really good to have an awareness of your strengths, And but now we're going to talk about a real moment in your life that was a bit of a crisis. You had worked on Girls the last 3 seasons, and you felt your groove there. You said, you were in the Judd Apatow, Lena Dunham world, and you understood the material and you were very comfortable. But now Zach Braff, this 2017, he was doing a big budget movie, $30 million with stars, a remake of Going in Style. So it was going to be a lot of footage, a lot of pressure, and you had a total anxiety crisis and something which, of course, all editors experience in some form or another starting a movie, but this was much worse, imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
So describe how you got through that, like being frozen and intimidated by the scale of that production.
Well, first of all, I wasn't starting the project. I was in the middle of the project.
Oh, you were in the middle.
Yeah. So I was literally in New York cutting dailies, and I was just overwhelmed by the scale of the show, and I was overwhelmed by the amount of footage coming in, and I just felt that I shouldn't be here. I can't do it. I need to quit. And I just got so in my head about not being able to do good for Zach and do good for the studio, and it was frozen practically. It was like I equate editing or even whatever we do with sports. I just felt like I had no game at all, and I just coach take me out, and it was actually my assistant editor at the time.
Assistant editors, yay!
Annie, and
can you say her full name? You have to say full name.
Annie Gudici. Does Annie still go by Annie Gudici? But anyways, Annie was just a great person to talk to say, and to be honest with her and say, I think and she traveled out from LA to New York to be on the show with me, and just to have an honest conversation with your first, and not being afraid, because a lot of firsts might just say, people who work for you might say, oh my God, your boss is like crumbling, like we're fucked. And I
have no fear.
I didn't have a problem with it apparently. I just and I think she was like, essentially the conversation was, you've got this. And I was able to slowly just switch my brain from just thinking that I don't have it to, okay, what's the process? The process is watching the footage. The process is making selects. The process is starting one shot and cut it next to the other. It was really simple, but I was like, I need a process. I have to remind myself when you have, 5 hours of footage for one scene, to not get overwhelmed and do what you always do, even if it was 5 minutes of footage, which is pick the best bits, see how your heart responds to something, and construct. And I was able to just sort of get back to basics, get back to the work, and remind myself of why I was here and how, what I've always done. But I did boil it down to actually beats of a process that now I use all the time. I watch all the footage before I even make a marker on my timeline. I take notes. I watch it like an audience member. I respond to it, and then I start selecting. Then I start building, and that might take days or weeks or months or what have you, but it was my way to just boil it down in really simple, basic ways, which sounds kind of crazy, but...
Not at all, and I think it's just so great because, not that this is a spoiler alert, but exponentially, things were going to keep getting bigger and bigger. The movies and the budgets and the footage, and the fact that you had this crisis was a reset for you and sort of looking in the mirror in a way that would help you in the future a lot. So it's kind of good it happened at that moment, because you're about to embark on some pretty big films. So speaking of Crazy Rich Asians, so you wanted this, you read the book. I know you didn't read the book,
right.
Which is also, I think it's interesting and smart. But you heard about this, and you kind of campaigned for it a little bit, and then you had a Zoom meeting with John Chu, the beginning of what has become a wonderful, what I call the analogy of a marriage, when an editor has a partnership of trust and collaboration and shorthand and all those wonderful things that come from long term. But this was the beginning. And how did that Zoom meeting go?
It went well, I think. I was terrified because, I don't even think it was it Zoom at the time?
It wasn't Zoom.
It was probably Skype, because there wasn't Zoom. And so we weren't used to doing interviews that way, and he was prepping in Malaysia, and I just thought the only way I can convince this guy to hire me is I have to just go guns blazing and just say, I'll kill to work on this project. And I did really respond to the script. It was one of the best scripts I'd read in my career, and it's like, John, I just have to do this movie. I'll do anything to work on this movie. And And I got off Skype, and I called my wife into the room. I was like, I think I might be moving to Malaysia in like 2 or 3 weeks.
Honey.
Yeah.
Okay, and the beautiful thing, which unfortunately doesn't happen very much anymore, was because Myron went to Singapore and Malaysia for, was it 9 weeks? They got to watch dailies together 2 or 3 times a week, and so they had, it was a bonding thing where you got to know and trust each other a little. I mean, it's a great sort of fast track way to get to know a director, and it was the beginning of this beautiful partnership. And now I want to tell you, Myron, we have a little surprise for you.
Oh no.
Can we roll the clip, please?
Hey, Edit Fest, and everyone over there. It's John M. Chu. I am the director of Crazy Rich Asians, of the upcoming Wicked movie, and I am the work husband of Myron Kerstein. And I heard he's speaking to you guys today, and you are very lucky. I am very lucky to have him in my life, as you all know, to find the perfect match for your vision and to share in the creative work that it takes, and the time it takes, and the sacrifices it takes to make a movie is a miracle in itself. But when you find the right person, you know you never let them go. Myron and I met each other on Crazy Rich Asians on a blind connection, and we loved music, rhythm, and most of all, heart. And that's what Myron has completely in him. He thinks, of course, story first and everything, character first and everything. But more than that, he's a great collaborator. He allows me to be wrong. He corrects me. He saves my butt. And he's a great, great, great storyteller. And so I feel, sorry, I'm in the edit room. See, we're busy even at whatever time it is tonight. But I can't wait for you guys to hear him speak. You're very lucky. I'm very lucky. And wait until you see what he got in store for you with Wicked. There's the best is yet to come. So, all right, good luck, Myron. I love you. Talk to you later. Peace.
You can cry now.
He always has a mic drop, by the way. He's like,
So we're going to start showing clips. We have some wonderful clips for you. I know somebody has already made an announcement, but we are showing a clip from Wicked later, and which no one has seen before. But please don't record it because the producer trusted Myron with this. And
yeah, I'll get fired. So.
He'll get fired and maybe put in editor jail, whatever that is. But this is a really cool sequence to talk about. Myron, you have described this as a classical guitar sequence in the sense that you cannot miss a note because everyone will know. And I always think the most impressive thing, we all watch things and we don't really know what the quality of the footage was, what the editor had to work with, how much control they had. But when you're watching a scene with subtext and looks and eyes and psychology, and you are always where you want to be as an audience, then you know the editor knows their stuff. And when you see this sequence, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's the mahjong scene, and I'll let you set up the clip, but just to stay, I don't know if you want to talk about it afterwards. It's a game. Mahjong is a game, which Myron still doesn't know how to play. And you don't have to, because that's not what it's about. And it's about, but there was B-roll of Michelle Yeoh giving instructions that weren't meant for you, but it helped you.
Yeah, there was B-roll, but they record, because John always records sound, because he liked the sound of the pieces, and so I hear Michelle basically describing the game, and like, oh no, that goes here and that goes. So I was like able to listen to the B-roll and get an idea of like how to construct things based on what she was saying off camera, and I guess the way to set up this is that this is our finale of the film, And for whoever hasn't seen it, basically Rachel Chu has come to Singapore, invited by her boyfriend to attend his best friend's wedding. And Mom doesn't like her. And Mom's played by Michelle Yeoh. And so all this stuff has happened, and basically right before this scene, her boyfriend proposes to her. Now, I'll tell you the story later, but basically we don't know what her answer is. And so she's going to basically have a sit down with his mom and say what she's going to say and leave. And so the important thing is to know that what we're trying to do is to make it feel like a bit like I would say that this is our Avengers sort of action sequence.
Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon,
Yeah.
Raging Bull, and a ballet.
Yeah, all in one, and make it have some tension in there, and there's a bit of a speech in there, and make it as elegant as possible.
And a war of wills between these two women, and Myron's contribution, one of his contributions is that originally you do know what her answer is to the proposal, and it's so the tension and how it plays out and the reveal is so much more powerful when we find out as an audience as Michelle Yeoh finds out, and that was a great idea. But we'll run the clip now, and you can enjoy it. It's wonderful. So great. And I love the way you explained how you built out from that speech, that great speech that Constance Wu gives, Rachel, and that that's how you found your place to start.
Yeah,
and
that speech was really difficult because she had varying degrees of tone and performance, and I just couldn't get it right. But when I did, I had basically the backbone of the scene, and then I could start spreading out from there.
Which is a great strategy. And also you said there were maybe 20 versions of Michelle used, like how much anger to play with,
Yep.
But you see the reveal that she turns down Nick, and then that piece, even though I don't know Mahjong either, but the piece she sacrifices her winning piece, so the piece represents Nick, and that's all you really need to know about the game. And yeah, it's just a brilliant, and you said that after that, everything kind of fell into place in terms of choices you made through to the end because of how you geared everything, it set something in motion.
Yeah, I love that scene too because it's a pretty, on the surface, it's a pretty simple scene. Mm-hmm. It's just a two-hander sitting at a table, and but the culmination of the emotion over the course of the scene is, I still I'm getting goosebumps watching that scene, and it's miraculous that it still works the same way I cut it for the first time. And I just love that I couldn't hide behind the action or a lot of music during the scene.
Yeah.
I just sort of, it's just a slow build, and it's a classic guitar. You're just really playing those notes and hoping that the audience will react the same way you are.
And I find from editors speaking about challenging scenes or crucial scenes that very often those are the ones that don't change that much because there's so much maybe thought put into it that you're already sort of edited before. And also a lot of directors like, I'm not going to touch this is working.
Yeah, it's essentially my assembly.
Yeah.
It's very close to.
Very common, yeah. A smart director will know that. So now we're going to talk about In the Heights. So now you have, the Going in Style little breakdown is going to have been very useful that you got through that because now you're presented with a lot of cameras running at the same time, tons of footage. But I also want to talk about, because this sort of informs things that come up again and again, and in Wicked particularly, it really comes to fruition. But this idea that, you saw Hamilton. So I don't know if people know this, but In the Heights was the revolutionary musical. Hamilton was extremely successful, but Lin-Manuel Miranda had already combined traditional musical format with hip hop in the Heights. So he starred in it. He wrote the music and lyrics. You saw Hamilton in person, and you also watched videos of him performing. You didn't see the whole musical. But so what was your reaction to this style that was actually now going to be the style of this movie?
Well, first of all, when I saw Hamilton, I was like, holy fuck, I gotta raise my game. Like, I'm working for Shakespeare, and I have to up my game. Like, there's no world in which I can just phone this in. Not that I was going to, but I really felt the pressure of working for Lin. I already felt the pressure of John, just wanting to do good by him, but just wanting to do right by the material. But I had never cut anything like that. Of course, with Vargas, I had Puerto Rican kids, and I understood the community a bit from past projects I had worked on, in a very remote way, but still, I knew those. That setting and the characters a bit, but I didn't know, I had never had that opportunity to cut something with fast-paced rapping and really complex sort of melodic treatments, how they'd overlap each other. And all this to say that I was intimidated, for sure, when I was approaching the footage. But again, it was just, even though the stakes were high, I was like, okay, this is the next bar I have to meet, but I'm going to do exactly the same thing I've always done, which is watch the footage, take notes, react to it emotionally, what makes me cry, laugh, etc., and then just start building. And the good thing about the clip we're about to watch is it was over the course of the entire shoot that they were shooting bits and pieces of it. So it gave me time to sort of construct this, and even we had pickups later on because we had stock footage in there for the longest time, and representing different parts of the community, and storyboards and Google Earth shots of Washington Heights. And yeah, it was good to have that time to sort of absorb and construct this thing.
And this idea that lyrics and dialogue are sort of intermingled, the density of course, Hamilton, but so that's such an interesting thing because it also makes, a musical is sort of problematic for modern audiences, like the corny thing of breaking into song, but this idea that dialogue scenes and songs and musical numbers are really sort of blended in, but also the same. And John Chu, who had done the Step Up movies, you had similar sensibility going in, and now you have Lin-Manuel Miranda, who had a very specific way of revolutionize this intermingling, but it also doesn't feel like this artificial way of getting into it. And also, you have the first 10 minutes of a movie, you're kind of establishing this is going to be your ride, and it was an unusual ride. There was magical realism, so you had to tell the audience this, be prepared, get into this world, building a world. The other thing I wanted to just bring up, because it may be interesting for the editors in this audience, is that you resist the multicam function, and, because he's got, how many cameras running at some point?
3, 4, 6.
3 to 4. So can you explain to the audience why you resist cutting with the multicam function?
I guess it's the same with like a script sync. Like I use all of these functions, by the way. I use multicam and script sync later in the process.
Right.
But what I found is like if I do it from the get-go, it's a crutch. And so if there's 6 cameras, I'm going to watch them all as just single dailies. I might fast forward, what have you, just to, get a basic idea of it. But I tend to feel like I'm going to miss something, or I'm going to cut something in a way that isn't like true to the way I'm supposed to construct a scene by the crutch of the multicam or script sync. Again, I'll use all these things later on if I want to find my way or I'm having a...
But it's interesting that I find that the most successful and editors or most talented editors, they always talk about really having a commitment to mining the gold. I mean, you all use different words, nuggets, gold, whatever, but it's that thing of never giving up and not being satisfied when you haven't really unearthed because there's so many, lucky accidents or little moments that can cumulatively make a wonderful film. And so I love what you said about that. And just one more thing before we watch the clip. You said the framing device was the bane of my existence. Can you explain, or do you want to talk about that after they see it?
No, it's helpful to
okay.
have content. The idea of having a narrator telling the story was also kind of something that was hard to get right, as far as when the narrator should show up, when should we stop to tell a story. At some point in the course of the movie, we break the narration and we start to, is this reality, is this fantasy? And so it was a really complicated device. Like, so many times I've used voiceover in movies, and as soon as you go down that voiceover rabbit hole, it becomes a big mess, and then that's sort of integrated into your script, and then you're filming this narrator, and so it's a really hard thing to pull off.
And breaking the fourth wall.
Breaking the fourth wall, winking at the camera, all those things are really difficult to do, to understand how, are you allowed to do it? Is the audience taken out once you do it? How do you get them back? Or can you mess with that, the notion of a narrator to explore other ideas and themes, and it just became really complicated, and at some point it was like, let's take all the narration out, let's take everything. Usnavi should never show up, we tried that too, but eventually we got it right. I think we got it right.
Oh, and one more thing, because I don't want to forget this. You talk a lot about how you don't want to cut things like a music video. And certainly some, like 96,000, there are numbers in there where, this community you're cutting to, that's sort of your purpose, to establish a community. But for the most part, can you describe what you mean by that?
Well, first of all, I love music videos. I love them.
You grew up on them.
Yeah. Yeah, I grew up on music videos, and that's one of the reasons why I'm attracted to images with music, I guess I just want to make sure that I'm a good storyteller first, and that I can hopefully stay in the construction of a scene rather than just cutting something because it can cut to something, and just have reason and purpose to do it. And of course, even in this opening number, there's little flourishes to the community that's maybe music video-like, and if anything, I went for it more on this than, say, you'll see eventually, like with Wicked. But I just wanted to have purpose with all the edits. I didn't want it to be random. I want it to serve the story as much as possible. And the minute I'd forget that, that's when things just felt a little bit arbitrary.
Yeah, and also there's so many musical numbers in this. You talked about the importance of, you had the luxury to revisit it because of COVID 6 months later, and, letting things breathe. You have so many musical numbers, you can get sort of on overload and everything doesn't resonate the way it should. So I thought that was interesting too. But we can run the clip now. It's the opening, so you don't need a setup. Thank you.
What does sueñito mean?
Sueñito. It means little dream.
I wanted to watch the whole movie now.
I know. It's hard to, how do you end? There's no end. But, you talking about finding just stock footage to set up the community and then doing a beautiful job ultimately. We wanted to explain to you the framing device was a unique challenge for the movie because in the musical, Lin-Manuel Miranda speaks to the audience, but he's not in Puerto Rico with these children. And spoiler alert, but at the end of the movie, you find out that's his daughter, and he's not in Puerto Rico. Home is where you live.
Yeah, he's in Washington Heights, so he's telling the whole story in the bodega. And so that was one of the reasons why I was like, if this doesn't work, we can just get rid of it. And because we know it works in the state.
Yeah, so they were a little concerned because it wasn't in the. So we're going to move along because now Myron hears from John Chu after this movie. Lin is going to call you. And he's like,
what?
What?
Why?
Why?
Why? What did I do?
And you knew him. I mean, you had seen him a few times, but you didn't have a lot of interaction with him. He was a producer, but.
Yeah,
So,
to Lin's testament, he never really dictated to John and I anything really in the movie. And in fact, even when we moved things around structurally, he was totally okay with it. And so when John said Lin was calling you, I was really confused. I had no, and he had already shot his movie. So I knew Tick, Tick, Boom.
Tick, Tick, Boom. Yeah.
And so we were in the middle of COVID too, and so I was really confused when he said, "Hey, my editor's leaving, and we have a long, long way to go. Will you move to New York and cut this movie with me?"
In my house.
In my house, yeah.
And he's like, I'm just this kid from the San Diego suburbs, and I'm going to be working with Lin-Manuel Miranda in his house. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty confusing too, because I thought that would never ever happen.
And I love this editorial story because it is an editorial. So it hadn't been really screened for anyone. It was sort of the director's cut at this point, and you ran the movie. What did you think?
I thought he was in trouble. I thought that the movie was really good, but I thought that everyone's going to hate this character, and I hate this character, and I was really worried for Lin because this was his first movie, and I thought, and by the way, I had already agreed to work on the movie. And I hadn't moved to New York yet, so they sent me a cut on Pix and watched it, and I was like, oh no, what did I do? This was a horrible mistake. I'm never going to be able to solve this. But it was too late, of course, so I was like, okay, let's roll up our sleeves. And soon enough, I was one of the first viewers that they had screened for, because again, it was COVID, where there's a handful of producers to see the movie, but they hadn't shown it to Netflix yet. And once we did start screening it, sure enough, people really turned against it. And it was mostly the way how they identified with Jonathan Larson, Andrew Garfield's character.
So if you don't know about Jonathan, what made him famous was he wrote Rent. He created Rent, wrote Rent, but he died shockingly at 35 of a brain aneurysm the day before the first preview off Broadway. So we never got to see the success of that. But the opening of the movie is he's complaining that he's about to turn 30, and you don't know he's going to die, so there's this whole poignancy to it that they don't show. They just show this sort of whiny, self-indulgent artist talking about, I'm going to turn 30, and Sondheim wrote West Side Story before that, woe be me, or all this stuff, and it was just, so that was part of the problem. But one thing I love about this story, Myron's journey on this movie, is, when you're an editor, you have to be strategic, and you can't just jump in guns blazing, and you have to find your moment and take baby steps to, you're right, because editors are always right, but you have to wait till it is like a marriage, in that sense, it's like pick your battles, pick your moments. So you had already just for yourself, you were like You dropped in an obituary or something? What did
The
you
first
do?
thing I did after I saw the movie, because of course I had the knowledge of Jonathan Larson having passed away the eve of Rent, and having that knowledge in my brain affected how I was perceiving the movie. But knowing that the audience didn't have that, the first thing I did is I literally looked up his obituary, and I made a screenshot, and I told the editorial team to import it, I think. But regardless, I had it with me, thinking there's something there in that information. And I was terrified to tell Lynn anything. Like we were speed dating on the, in the cutting room, So the first thing out of my mouth saying your movie sucks, is probably not the best way to start your relationship.
Not really.
So I had to have some data from other people who had screened the movie, and also I needed to make sure I wasn't wrong. I wanted to make sure other people had the same notions, and then I started analyzing, well, if I gave the audience certain bits of information about Jonathan's life in the beginning, maybe that'll let us connect to him in ways that I would if I had that information already as well.
And also, not just that he was going to die, but softening him. So here's a photo opportunity for an editor, a bad screening. Because then you can go, So tell the Paul Rudd story, which kind of opened things up.
Yeah, it all sort of culminated at the same time. We had a bad screening. We showed Paul Rudd the movie one night at Lynn's place, and Paul's like, the movie's amazing, and I was like, what do you guys think about the opening? And I was like, well, we're in trouble. And Paul was like, well, I heard this story from the editors on Meet the Parents, and apparently the director had a really tough time at the beginning of the movie, and they decided to shoot a bunch of home video footage of Ben Stiller and his family, and they put it in, and then suddenly the film turned around. And Paul left, and I said to Lynn, I was like, that's exactly what we should do. That's exactly what we should do. And there was also all this, we had all this amazing footage of Jonathan Larson, video footage that you actually see during the credits in Tick, Tick, Boom, of him working at the Moondance Diner.
The real Jonathan Larson.
The real Jonathan Larson working at the Moondance Diner. And it's really beautiful, beautiful footage, and makes you really connect to him to see, as it should, sort of amongst people and having a good time and not complaining. And so we also had this component, the DP had Alice Brooks, who I love, I adore. She had shot all this B camera footage, video footage of the narration, the stage performance that we intercut throughout the movie. So I had that, and they hadn't used any of it. And so, okay, I have this as a possible device or texture. Maybe if we shoot some home video footage and do some other clever sort of tricks to allow you to sort of reconnect or connect to the character, then maybe we have a way to get the audience on board with us.
Because it was also softening him just as a person, and he worked in a diner, and he, it just makes him more human, and and originally he was just rushing to the theater, and it was sort of this pressure of getting, you even see in early trailers, but let's run the clip, and you'll totally get how. Oh, and you did pitch this. You created a mock-up and all this with words with Steve Levinson, the writer, and then they wrote a 4-page scene, and you're like, wait.
No, I literally we should have it. One of the things in the movie is that there's a diner scene later in the movie, and then there's a beautiful number called Sunday, and that diner scene comes in the middle of the film, and that's the first time that he really works at the Moondance Diner. So the audience that we had screened for really loved the fact that we see somebody working hard and rolling up them sleeves and working in the sort of the diner setting. And I was like, well, we need a diner setting from the get-go early in the movie. And also he has friends that work at the diner. You didn't meet them until later. So I literally like put in title cards like diner scene. I wrote my own scene, and they're like, no, that's horrible, but now let's write the scene. But the point being is like I was pitching a lot of elements that I thought would help connect the audience by picking apart other data that I was getting from other screenings and asking questions. The other thing that didn't exist was also another narration from his girlfriend to give you something else as far as like, this is about the person you're about to see. And none of that existed. We didn't even know that this guy wrote Rent before.
So when you watch it, it's going to be hard to imagine that none of it's in it because it's so important. It's like those, like I said, the first 10 minutes and you're establishing if you're not on the ride with this character, you're in trouble, you know? So it was a huge thing. And at the end, there's a diner scene too. So it's sort of a framing once again. So we can run the clip. Thank you.
Hi, I'm John.
Well, we have to jump into Wicked. I don't think we want to miss talking about that. So now, talking about exponentially getting to, now it's 200 million instead of 50, 3 or 4 times the footage. And you do talk about, which I did want to bring up, when you get overwhelmed with the musical number, like breaking it up into zones so you don't get overwhelmed. But, so I just want to say, right away that I had the luxury to see the film, and it is incredible. And I said to Myron, I was watching it as an audience, not analyzing the editing, and I said, there's something about this movie where you never feel like someone artificially breaks into song. It's so integrated into the dialogue, and there's some, you know, and it's like I said, it's hard for modern audiences. It's a stage musical, and it feels so cinematic and modern, and it's very unique in that way. And you just, you know, and it was recorded live. I mean, you didn't 100% use it, but I think that helps. But there was just something so magical about how that happened, and I didn't even understand what I was watching, but I just had that experience. So talk about the experience of starting on this project and 9,000 tulips, was that the?
Oh, I think it's like 9 million.
I mean, 9 million, I'm sorry.
Yeah, 9 million.
Yeah, it's also gorgeous, and you said the biggest surprise was,
Ariana Grande.
Ariana Grande.
Yeah, she's incredible. She's Audrey Hepburn. She's
and funny and comedic.
Yeah, she's just she's funny and also emotional, and so she has the chops. And so I think everybody was maybe curious about was she going to show up, and you know, she's been dreaming about this part all her life, and she showed up. And you know, Cynthia, we knew. I mean, she's been nominated for Oscars, and you know, we knew we weren't worried. But to have, you know, the film doesn't work unless both of them work, and they do. And it's the relationship is, talk about chemistry. It's everything.
What was your biggest challenge on this film? Just managing.
You know, the scale, the scale, I mean, it's still going, by the way. We're not locked. 2 weeks. We're doing VFX, mix. Annie is one of the assistant editors. She's in the audience.
Woo! Assistant editor!
She gets a promotion now because she's the only one that showed up. So, it's just the scale, the stakes for the studio. You know, several execs have come up and it's like, you know, this is the biggest thing we've ever made. And we're like, you're Universal, like. But you know, having a leader and friend and collaborator of a person like John keeps you at ease, because you know at the end of the day, it's just about making things and enjoying what you're doing, and do it with passion. And Anna, you could say if it's been fun or not, but we've had a blast making it. And so not being too, at first you're like the stakes, the scale, the budget, but at the end of the day, it's just been about making something really beautiful. And yeah.
And what was nice is because they had this long-term relationship and there was this trust, and he trusted Myron. Also, we haven't mentioned that you always tell him at the beginning, I don't want your input. Let me do my thing. But, getting his attention with all the VFX and all the hundreds of people more than ever, even though they were in the same building, just, that John knew you had it, and if there was a problem, you would tell him, but just, you didn't get, you didn't have the same kind of time you would normally get with him, so that, so maybe we'll run the clip, right? Because I want you to set up like what the temptations were when all the footage, the overlapping was available to you, so you could just go crazy. Yeah. But you're telling a story, unlike the opening of In the Heights, where you are focused a little on the main characters, but you're talking about a community. Your focus is on the two of them, and you're reminding yourself of that. And do you want to say what your first cut was, or should we show it first? The change you made.
Yeah. I was had a lot of footage, hours and hours and hours.
And this is What Is This Feeling? Is the number.
On Crazy Rich Asians, we had done this texting montage, which was really fun to put together. And sometimes you have these ideas in your head, and I don't know why I couldn't get rid of it. But I was like, I'll do the whole thing in split screens. And but the reason why I wanted to do it was basically because there was so much footage, I wanted to see all of it. Yay, let's do it on split screens. And I think that I also was interested in whether or not a film, a fantasy, something that felt a little bit more like a modern, modern musical could have split screens in it. I wasn't sure. But at the end of the day, a lot of that went away. But I worked probably weeks and weeks and weeks on a split screen version of this, and then I decided to just pull back of it and have a little sort of notion of it. But anyways, you'll see the result. Now, we're not locked, but this is locked, so no notes. I know there's something out there that you would change, but we don't have time. So anyways, enjoy it, you guys. This is extremely special because you guys are the only ones that matter. So you sing this. So.
Dearest, darlingest Momsy and Popsicle.
My dear father, thank you for agreeing to let me stay.
So great. So we're going to end this panel. I'm going to ask Myron a question I've never asked an editor before. What would you tell, knowing all that you know now in the life of an editor, what would you tell your 25-year-old self?
Okay, I'm going to tell the joke version first. Don't do it. Whatever you do, do not get into this field. But seriously, don't do it unless you love it. And you want to embrace and explore the craft, because it's a hard journey. This is 25 years of, I don't know what this is, but of a lot of a roller coaster ride of a career. I've had a lot of time thinking about my career and the choices I made, and they're all very random getting here. And sometimes I was cutting MetLife insurance industrials or Hillary Clinton's senatorial campaign video, and I didn't think I'd ever be doing something the scale of Wicked, but you got to love it, and you have to don't take things for granted. Don't think that anything's a sure thing. My career has been filled with multiple strikes, recessions. I've lost a house. I've bought a house. It's been a long, long journey, but you got to love it. You have to love it, and you have to. You need to come to things like this. Ask people like myself, what you like of, about editing or filmmaking, and learn from each other and have each other's back. But you got to love it and embrace it. And sometimes I didn't do that in the very beginning. So I'm glad I got through this journey, and I'm very thankful that I'm here right now. And this is being next to you. I mean, this is like. So just to give you a little context, I used to watch clips of other panels that Bobby did. Kevin Tintz sitting here, and I'd be sick in bed watching, and and I said to Bobby, you're like comfort food, just like, and so this is a huge honor to be sitting in this chair at all, and.
Thank you, Myron. I love that you said that about you have to really want it, because I do see a commonality. I've interviewed so many editors, and the commonality is that obviously everybody's journey is different, and they're all different, but the one thing that is pervasive is the passion that you get the opportunities. Luck and timing unfortunately play a role. But you get noticed because of your passion and your hard work, but mostly your passion, that even when you go into interviews and you don't talk too much about yourself. Talk about your passion for the project or the editor you're working for, or your own passion, and people feel it, and it's like a magnet, and it attracts them to you and makes them want, because it is a collaborative art, and it makes them want you to be part of the team. So take those words to heart. He knows what he's talking about. I don't think we have time for questions. I don't know. Do we? Yes?
I just want to let you know, I went and saw Beetlejuice 2 last night, and they ran the trailer for Wicked, and the entire theater erupted in applause, and I've never seen people applaud.
Oh, thank God. It just came out, and I'm like, are they gonna be okay? Are they gonna like?
I've seen that in theaters too. Okay. That people are going crazy. So.
Did you cut part 1 and 2 at the same time of Wicked?
So we have a rough assembly of the second movie. I was drowning in footage because it was an 8-month shoot, and cutting both at the same time. It was really helpful having TV experience because it was like block shooting. And so it was really great to have some television experience to understand how to cut multiple episodes at the same time. But also Tatiana Rigo came on too to help me. Again, one of my heroes in this chair, and I was like, please, 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 I'm drowning, help me. And then we have the rough assembly, and we put it to sleep. Because it was just, Tatiana couldn't stay on, John didn't have the bandwidth, and I certainly didn't. And so it's going to be awoken again in a couple weeks, and then we'll start on the second one.
But what's useful too about putting it to sleep, you were telling me, is that the movie will come out, you'll kind of get input from that, but knowing maybe you'll do some integration or flashbacks, or it gives them the flexibility to work with, like how to follow up with what the audience has responded to. And the block shooting is interesting because you said it's good because you got context back and forth, but you also got a relief sometimes to get away from that. But then you had to orient yourself. Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention that you were talking about is how you had to create a balance between the darkness and then lighten it up, like being very conscious tonally of not, it's for a family audience. It's a PG movie. So, getting very dark and scary, and then PG, yeah. And then, finding, tonally movies, that's always an issue with movies. Like, you're talking about letting scenes breathe in musicals, you always have to have that overall. And I thought that was really interesting that you had to work with that, too.
Yeah, I know we have to wrap up soon, but I really feel like understanding tone in any project that you work on is really important. And if you don't know the tone of your project, or your director doesn't know the tone of the project, you're kind of screwed. There's almost nothing you can do about it. But once you can understand, you'll see with the first movie, it's a bit of an arc. It's almost like what is this feeling is very early in the movie. So it's very joyous, it's a lot of fun, but there's an evolution in the tone that is pretty dark. And then the second movie gets even darker. So, and it's sometimes confusing when you're watching dailies, and one day it's just like, oh my God, this is melodrama seeping out of it, and then the next day it's like popular. And so, if you understand the script and where the story is going and what is happening tonally, it's really helpful.
Oh, sorry.
Earlier you talked about interpretations, how you ended with that scene, kind of like a ballet, and just like delicate things. Could you elaborate on that? Because I know it's like a skill, but also just how would you recommend editing something like that to be in that style?
Yeah, I guess when I first started seeing the B-roll of that footage of the Mahjong tiles, I started to feel like it was like a little bit of a dance number. And so I was like, how would I construct a dance number, or how would I construct just showing the sort of setup of this game? And, it's just playing around with things and being open. And sometimes I like to equate editing the way, you draw. Like you're just literally sketching things and not getting too bogged down on getting something perfect. So you just sort of keep throwing things next to each other and finding different rhythms, and then eventually it starts to feel more elegant and fluid, and there's a rhythm to it. And I think that if you can keep yourself a little loose at first, as you explore the footage, and not try to get everything perfect, then it starts to find its own shape and rhythm to it, And then the director either says you got it right or it's all wrong. Or
you know what I also liked? Did you notice the tiles were loud? It felt like the beats of a dance, like tapping or something. And that was a really nice.
And we added more of that sound in the mix and stuff just to bring it out.
Yeah.
Hey.
So I wanted to know, with In the Heights, Tick, Tick, Boom, and Wicked, they're all adaptation pieces. Did you watch any of the musicals beforehand? What was your approach to coming with that material, especially that being loved by so many people?
Yeah, well, with In the Heights, I hadn't seen the stage musical because it wasn't really out there anymore. So, but then I did see, Lynn showed me a bunch of stuff during Tick, Tick, Boom of things, behind the scenes stuff later. And then Tick, Tick, Boom, there wasn't really anything that existed as far as, and then Wicked, of course, I'd seen many times. And it's the first time that I really had a deep connection to the stage musical, and terrified by that. So my approach was like, what is the essence of what is happening in the stage musical? Which is, and with Wicked, I feel it's about the relationship of those two characters, and that's all that matters, and getting that right. And if that works, then the rest of the movie around it is going to be key. Within the Heights, I just knew that it was about community and about the setting, about representing Washington Heights through cinema. And so trying to make it feel grounded and joyous. The joy was a big word. I think joy is somewhere, Easter egg somewhere in there. And then, Tick, Tick, Boom was just kind of like, this is a experimental musical. And that's, I loved All That Jazz, of course. Like All That Jazz was just a huge part of my influence as somebody who wanted to make films. And so that's very experimental. And of course, you're always like, how do we beat All That Jazz? But I also had a love for musicals growing up. I loved, my first musical I loved was Music Man, which is really corny. But and then of course Sound of Music and Grease and then of course music videos and all that sort of was swirling in my brain when I had manifested years ago that I wanted to work on a musical, and then I started working on Crazy Rich Asians, and I'd heard his next project might be In the Heights. I was like, oh my God, am I going to get to work on In the Heights? So a lot of it just sort of came together over time. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it's interesting, like being informed, but also being open. Like you didn't want to read the book for Crazy Rich Asians, and you saw Hamilton.
I'm a real slow reader, so I just want to.
But sometimes it's good to be open and just read the footage as audience. Right?
With Wicked, I really did want to know the source material a lot more. I saw it once with my son, maybe 10 years ago, and at first I didn't get it. To be honest with you, I was just like, I don't, Wizard of Oz retelling one. And my son just was in tears, and then. Years later, I saw it again on Broadway the week that Broadway was reopening from the pandemic, and it was like a rock show. It was amazing experience being in that audience, and I had never felt anything like it. It was like Beatlemania, and I was like, people are connecting to this in ways that I need to understand. And then I started to understand it was about this relationship, and so I've analyzed that moment of being in the audience myself and saying that's how the audience needs to feel when they watch.
But it's interesting you're talking about Fosse and everything, because it is a musical, but it's cinematic, like I said earlier, and that's what's so you're going to get the musical theater nerds, but you're going to get everyone because it's a movie. It feels like a movie. No, it's a tricky thing. Some musicals haven't done that well because people the artificiality is a little off-putting, and it's just not true in this movie. You'll see, it's just incredible. So I think on that note, we're probably over time, but thank you all so much. Thank you. And Myron.
Thank you so much.